Hey guys, and welcome back to the Betarians podcast with me,
Oh,
Joe.
I'm sorry. Can you stop recording? Yeah, I know, Dad. The post. Yeah, the post is outside.
This is a good
What?
start.
I mean, we're already
Okay,
streaming.
I'll talk to
Too
you
late
after.
now.
Okay. I'm so
Uh,
sorry. It was Postman Pratt. All hell's broken loose.
that's all right. That's all right. I mean, hey, we're in the middle of we're in the middle of another lockdown at the moment in here in the UK, and Postman can be the bane of our existences. I
It
mean,
totally is.
last week I got interrupted by one of my housemates. So I mean, it's only fair.
It's just the fact that he's like a main character in our whole household right now. He's just perpetually upset that he has to deliver the post to our house. And he always comes down with like his blaring, things that and it shakes the whole house, and it's like, and they're like special delivery, throws it at the front door, like there you go. Enjoy your deliveries.
I guess.
Alex lives in the worst sitcom world ever.
It's true. It is absolutely true. I was talking about this the other day on another podcast where like I got delivered like bits of 2 vacuum cleaners in replacement to a replacement vacuum cleaner. It's like in a broken ass plastic bag from homies smashed into my letterbox, and it was like I mean, I could understand it getting smashed into my letterbox and being broken, but it's 2 different vacuum cleaners that got smashed into my letterbox. I'm like, you know what? You're just messing with me now. Post office, you're just messing with me now. This ain't it.
I guess you
I
could
admit this is
say.
funny.
I guess you could say. The greatest weakness to all podcasts is background noise, or
Oh.
interruptions, and that's great because we're going right into it. Weaknesses in storytelling or in fiction.
I mean, we should say one thing first. We do love the post office and all the good they do for this
We don't
country.
wanna
Yes,
we don't wanna
absolutely,
lose that sponsorship, but
absolutely. We
Yeah,
don't want to lose.
yeah. We may hit that one specific person, but in general, thank you, post office.
I say, and to that I say, I guess welcome to this very strange podcast. We're doing it at a different time than we normally do, on a different day that we normally do, because scheduling has been crazy, and I mean, further upsets in scheduling will happen again, uh, later on. Who's to say how that'll affect these podcasts? We might not be doing them as streams anymore, or we might just on different days. So everyone who's looking forward to that, I guess, keep posted. So weaknesses in storytelling. Obviously, we're talking about superpowers, but we're not just talking about those. We're actually talking about all other kinds of just weaknesses in general, so fiction, storytelling, even specifically, obviously in the real world, and obviously in games, tabletop RPG specifically. Um, Obviously, the big one, I'll throw this one out here, is obviously kryptonite for Superman. If people who don't know what weaknesses are, it's something that makes a character more vulnerable, either quite literally or emotionally or figuratively, either in combat, strategic value, anything. But in this particular circumstance, kryptonite is actually from Superman's home planet, Krypton, and it's a radioactive material, sort of similar to uranium, but instead of a metal, it's actually a crystal. And the crystal itself is green glowing rock known as kryptonite. Whenever Superman is within a certain vicinity of it or holding it, his powers are dampened. They're harder for him to use them or control them, and it slowly kills him through the radiation. He has to get away from it a safe distance, or it has to be lead lined for him to actually be okay with it. Um, and yeah, it's the most famous weakness of all times. I feel like at this point, because a lot of people say, "Oh, what's your kryptonite?" or "Oh, that's my kryptonite," or "Oh no, this is my kryptonite." Everyone uses that as a joke. I mean, I think they even mention it once or twice in a bundle of different shows that confirmed don't have DC comics or aren't part of DC comics. And I feel like even I think it's even in the Flash CW show, someone uses the term, "Oh, is that your kryptonite?" And they later confirm that kryptonite is a real thing, and Kryptonians are also a real thing. So either way, it's kind of interesting.
I mean, that's a really bizarre thing to have in universe.
Mm.
People in the DC universe to say that's my kryptonite, whenever that's the thing that literally kills their favorite superhero,
It's
the
like,
one that
not,
saves the
first of
day.
all, they're not Superman's not necessarily their favorite superhero, but it's
Oh,
like,
you know what I
I
mean?
mean, it's like, it's just an iconic thing, isn't it? Like, if that happened in your world, like, you have this all-powerful godlike being, and then he gets near this rock, and he instantly goes, "Oh, no," small dog meme, "I'm too weak." People are gonna remember that. People will be like, "Ah, oh dear. All that has to be done now is someone just throw rocks at this guy, and he's basically just useless in a fight now." So, so that's a PR disaster for Superman right there. Like, so I don't think it's so weird because people would know about it. I mean, as soon as that's revealed as a thing that can happen, everyone's gonna try and throw kryptonite at Superman. Like, and I think they do most of the time. I mean, Lex Luthor keeps freaking doing that. Like, "Oh, your one weakness, you say? Well, best make a suit out of this stuff so you can't hit me."
And powered by it, and using weapons made of
Lex
it,
Luthor's a
and
dick.
And
I'm just
making
saying.
villains like Metallo with it.
yes, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, so I mean, obviously that's the biggest example. Um, Alex, I know yours, so we're going to actually go on to Sam's first.
Go.
Sam,
Oh.
what is your example of a weakness in storytelling or fiction?
Well, I'm gonna go with. I was debating should I go for the obvious Greek one or should I go for a comic book one or I should say a Spider-Man one. And I thought, you know what, considering my only one, I went Spider-Man. I decided to go for the Venom symbiote, which has two major weaknesses and pretty much nothing else: fire, sonic damage, or not so much sonic as just really loud noises.
I mean, sonic attacks have been proven
But
to work, but
yes, but
yes,
also
just
just
loud noises
essentially
in
just
general.
a really loud noise.
Mm.
Like a rock concert would almost kill this thing.
Yes, yeah.
Obviously saw in the movies, in the one movie, actually in the two movies. Actually, I haven't seen the Venom movie. In this
Venom
three
movie,
movie.
it's kind of debate. I mean, like, because
As
they go into
shown
one of these.
in media.
Yeah,
Oh, in okay, we'll go with as we've seen in the comics and Spider-Man 3 and
The
the
shows, the
great
animated
cartoon
shows.
the great cartoon series. Venom is essentially very, very, very hard to actually attack or hurt because punches just don't do much to him. Pretty much almost undefeatable. They even did a comic where what if Spider-Man was still controlled by the symbiote and he defeated the Avengers.
Damn. Well, yeah,
mm,
because he's one of the only people that the symbiote gets way back when anyway, before they retconned
Then
it and
yeah,
said that Deadpool got it.
um,
It was one of the
before
first.
retcons existed in the Marvel
He was
universe.
it was the first super powered being to have actually been attached to the symbiote. So it's like it enhances the user's strength massively
Yeah,
and further amplifies different abilities. I mean, obviously we know that it grants a healing ability and other capabilities as well as amorphous different capabilities and techniques. But one of the biggest ones is that it's genuinely just so durable, and it's basically like it's it's basically like if Captain America was to wear the Iron Man suit, or if Hulk was to actually be
I
wearing the
mean,
Hulk Buster on top or something. It's like, yeah,
I'd
here's
say
this
even more
real.
durable than that.
Well,
and it's
yes, yeah,
also got
but
perception abilities as well. Like, it enhances very I mean, at least in the Venom movie, it does it. Like,
And
it's essentially taking over your body so that you have heightened senses, which is a benefit and a detriment. Like, you can just sniff out food wherever, and as well as giving you a boost of strength, it gives you dexterity and like the ability to evade attacks because you're constantly sensing everything.
and
absolutely.
coolest part yet is they can actually, or at least in the cartoons, it can actually make you change your clothing. So you could just walk in wearing the suit and then just transform into wearing a business suit.
I did not know that
So,
that was one of its abilities.
I mean,
That's
because
handy.
imagine what is it? It's just this. It's just like this black substance. Of course, it can probably transform into various different objects. Considering it's been able to do that in at least the Carnage symbiote. Actually, they both can. they can kind of manipulate themselves into various different shapes and forms. Why can't it
Yeah, yeah.
transform its color?
That makes
But
sense.
and it has an added benefit against Spider-Man specifically, is that he can't sense it with his spider sense,
That is true. Yes, because
which is another detriment. But
yeah,
as we've seen in comics, the only way he's been able to defeat Venom is with his mind, because he's smart and clever, and has found ways around this because Venom is stronger. We do know this. And the only ways he's been able to defeat him is by getting him anywhere, either near fire or near something very loud, or in the case of tying him to a rocket, both.
fair enough.
That happened
Hey,
once. As he
hey,
got
this
to,
guy's
like, a rocket
weakness is
face.
this guy's weakness is
He-
being set on fire and loud noises. Oh, I got it. Attach him to something that will launch him away, and it will explode in a fiery and very loud manner. Cool.
into outer space.
Oh.
We
Also,
don't want to.
I will.
We don't want to kill him off.
I will say that's also my weakness. I'm also not immune to rockets firing and setting me on fire.
Fair enough.
I mean, Alec, that is your only weakness, though.
Yes, I only mean
You into everything but
damn,
rockets.
rockets, my only weakness.
I mean, it does remind me a lot of a scene in Supernatural where it's
No.
like, oh, I need to stab this creature 7 times with a special Shinto blessed katana or something like that, and it's like, oh well, it doesn't have to be a katana; it can actually just be any particular special folded steel sword, and it's like, I have a little tanto knife that I got back from when I went to Japan in my earlier days. So he takes this little tanto knife and he like gets someone to bless it, and he's like, I already have it blessed. And he goes, how many times did you stab it? 5, 7. There's such weird numbers. It's like 5 or 7 is a big difference between dead and definitely not dead yet. And so like this, like he has to fight. He has to fight this creature, and he throws it into a wood chipper. And the guy calls him up and goes, "Did you stab it?" He's like, "No." "How'd you kill it?" "Wood chipper." Yeah, that pretty much beats everything.
It gets
I
really
have no
like,
idea. I have no idea how you got that from rockets, but okay.
Well, no, it's because
I mean,
what
no,
Alex
it
said of like,
is,
oh, I also have a weakness to rockets. Like, well, yes, we don't. I mean,
well,
most things could be
this is
blown
the
up by
whole thing
rockets.
with lore and stuff. Is like, you kind of think that, with specific weaknesses, like only this will kill it, and it becomes funny and ridiculous. Where it's like, yeah, we just like set it on fire and put it through a wood chipper, and then like set it on fire again. It's like, yeah, that'll kill anything. It seems a little bit anticlimactic because, like the funny thing about like specific weaknesses and stuff is that you can put it through a wood chipper, but if it ain't done in a specific way, those bits are gonna reform and they're gonna be, they're
I
still
think
gonna
the
be alive.
creature in on itself could die in multiple ways, but the way that a human can do it without any actual machinery or any help, they cannot kill it very easily. It's not that it can heal; it's just that it can just try and reattach itself in different ways, or it will just keep attacking until it is dead or until it gets what it wants. And it was that
Mm,
thing of like, it doesn't have a healing factor, uh, so it's like, okay, I'll just shove it into this thing, and it can't come back from that because
I
there's
mean,
none of it left to be able to move.
I should say this sounds like a second. This sounds like a second idea here. So it does, Joe. Sounds like 2 ones you've said now.
No, it was a
Yeah, I
bounce
think,
off from.
I think I should definitely be able to get Kelly's here now.
Well, thank you for forgiving me. So, Alex, what was your weakness example?
Well, I was gonna go for the whole of Pokemon with their weakness types and and strength types. Like, and it's kind of expanded a lot over the years. Like, before it was like very simple stuff like fire beats grass because you can burn grass and various plant life, so that makes sense. But grass beats water because the plants soak up water. And like lightning and rocks beat flying because if you throw a rock at a bird, it'll fall down. And if it gets stuck in a thunderstorm,
Well,
they're gonna electrocute you
well,
and
I mean, it
die.
makes sense.
This
So,
all
two
makes
birds,
sense
one
now, but
stone. But yeah, go on.
yeah, to birds, yeah, it makes sense bird in bird terms of the Pokemon universe. But they've expanded it quite a bit actually in quite interesting ways. Like they've introduced dark types and fairy types.
Steel, because I don't think they originally had
The
steel
only
in the
thing
first gen.
Oh, and steel. No, yeah, that one was introduced in the second one, and that's kind of like good. They had to introduce fairies and had to make yeah, because like steel would be like an immunity. Like normally it would be immune to like it normally if it was rock. Say for instance you have an onyx, that would be weak to water because water washes away the rocks.
Yeah, erosion and stuff like that, and obviously you've
And
got
erosion and stuff like that.
it makes them wetter and
Yeah.
therefore the weaker.
And
I
with
don't know.
steel, it's much stronger. Yeah. With steel, it's much stronger, so they were like, "Ah, but you can evolve your Onyx so it has that immunity now." And it's like, "Ah, that's great." But the problem was that, there wasn't it was weak to fire, so you'd have, like, rock types that normally be immune to fire, suddenly get this huge downgrade, to
Ultimately,
fire, which,
everything
kind of
has.
balances it out, but it's like swings and roundabouts, where now with fairy types, that's pretty much the only thing that can kill them, other than poison. Poison, it's actually quite good because poison was like still good, but it didn't have no big double damage, sort of thing. But
Wait, so
now
hang
that
on a sec.
fairies
Does
come along,
poison work really good against steel? Did you mean?
no, no, it
Oh,
doesn't.
okay,
It works
okay.
really good against fairies.
Ah.
That's the thing, Yeah,
Because
and fairies
fairies
can
can be
go against yeah.
corrupted, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly, because 'cause they're pure, and if you give them, like, poison that's kind of like the idea behind it, and it's like, yeah, they could also take down some of the really OP types as well, like dark Pokemon and dragon Pokemon. Like,
Yes, that
yeah,
was the biggest step up because dragons
I
only
mean,
had two weaknesses in the entire series
yeah.
themselves, dragon type, and ice.
I should say,
Ghosts were kind
far
of the
most
same.
badass one, of course, were bugs.
I
OP of
agree to
all.
disagree. I think there were quite good bug Pokemon, but let's be honest, the best bug Pokemon, Ninjask.
Yeah,
No,
Mm.
I'm kidding.
Metapod.
yeah,
Shedinja.
yeah, yeah,
So.
yeah.
Metapod's
Oh, people are
clearly the
gonna
best
hate
Pokemon
me.
ever.
um,
Metapod
Sorry,
fan
Alex.
club, right,
tune
stepping
in
up.
tune in next week where we talk about Pokemon extensively.
Metapod's greatness.
The Pokemon podcast, the Pokecast. Uh,
The Meta Podcast. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't
Good
like it.
night.
I don't like it.
Golf clap right over here.
I've just checked chat. I've just checked chat. Beedrill
Thing
is.
that kind of, like, squished everything up, which is why
I just love that like Beedrill.
no, but
I'd
that's, like,
say
the
yeah,
whole
Beedrill is
that
quite
was the
good.
whole thing that was kind of interesting because they had to, like, rebalance so much, because it's in the whole game. It's not just, an individual thing. It's like it's like, a really complicated rock, paper, scissors. Everything was supposed to fit together, but, like, naturally
It honestly, I think it's quite funny because
than
when we were
others, whereas,
talking
like,
about, well,
the
when we were
introduction
talking
of
about this,
fairy types
oh,
has sort of brought that down a bit. Yeah. Yeah,
well,
sorry.
I
Yeah,
was
but anyway, yeah, there's something it kind of makes sense narratively and, gameplay wise. Yeah, sorry, can you hear me? Get a
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
yeah, I can hear you. I think you might have a delay.
I'm cutting in and out, well,
I,
you're
I,
cutting
was,
in and out for me, but
we're just trying to let you do your speech thing, and then we can be quiet.
yeah, okay, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, me or Alex?
You go ahead, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say the thing is about how Pokemon worked was that it was interesting because it's like again as I said with the Kryptonite thing it's one of the oldest types of weaknesses, um and then you have the Pokemon system, which is in video games, is if not the, it is one of the oldest, but it is the most famous forms of weaknesses in all forms of video game lore. Because as you said, fire beats grass, grass beats water, water beats fire. As you said, the rock paper scissors of it all. Electricity hurts water, but ground can affect electricity, all these different things. I think they actually said if a Pokemon had all of the types, like if a Pokemon had every single one of the types, all the way from normal all the way up to psychic fairy, whatever. Its actual weakness would be ground. Like no matter what, even if a Pokemon had every type, which obviously it's not possible. They have it where it's a 2-type limit unless if they've changed that in the newest ones.
Oh
But
no, no, definitely just still 2-type.
oh,
Yeah.
that's good then. That's good. Again, if anyone's interested, I might do a Nuzlocke and I might
However,
stream it.
there are changing form Pokemon though. I don't know if that actually counts as having more than 2 types because
I'd say that's more
yeah,
just changing because they still have only the 1 or the 2. They can never have
that's true.
more than multiple at a time. But it was just said if something did, it would still have the weakness of ground, even if it had
Mm.
everything. So I
So
don't know.
to this day, Earthquake is still OP. Like there is like you can pretty much
Please don't
Earthquake
nerf.
anything. Yeah, don't yeah, actually, you know what? It is kind of a cheatability a bit, but at the same time, yeah, please keep it. I very much like that. It helps you out in a pinch. Pretty much anything getting Earthquake is like, yeah, good. I actually stand a chance in this fight.
And then you fight a bird type Pokemon or a flying type.
Oh no! That would actually be like the worst thing ever.
Just
Like you can
unaffected.
just you just like sweep everybody with Earthquake, and then the final gym leader is a flying type
My all
leader.
time favorite moment was I was playing as I think I was playing in either Emerald or Diamond. I can't fully remember, but I remember having a Pokemon where it has 2 different types, and I thought, yeah, there's nothing that can beat this type now. And I think it no, that's it. I had a Shift Tree, and they're Dark Grass, and I thought, yeah, nothing could beat me. Bug type, and I was like, you can't beat me. Didn't realize that Dark also had a weakness to Bug, and it take 4 times damage, and instantly KO'd my Shift Tree. I was like, no, just instantly. Oh man, I wasn't expecting that, and it is that thing of that is why it's so potent for this discussion. I mean, it's one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why I love this. I mean, obviously, talking about weaknesses, we'd completely be remiss if we didn't talk about levitation and fly, because there are 2 different types of Pokemon that can obviously learn, multiple different types of Pokemon that can learn fly. Flying type, where they can just hover or always be flying. But certain bird type Pokemon. And I think psychic types actually have an ability where they are floating or levitating. It's like a special ability where ground type abilities like earthquake and the caltrop one I can never remember, like razor grass or something. I can't remember what it is, or
Yeah, or
bind or
spikes.
spikes.
Like
That's it. Yeah,
when you
there
lay
you go.
down spike traps and stuff, it's like it doesn't affect them because they never hit the ground. Again, it's sort of like it's part of like the it makes sense sort of thing. It's like, yeah, of course they're literally off the ground. They wouldn't be affected by any ground moves or anything that you've put on the ground. So, yeah, why wouldn't they? And that could absolutely ruin your plans because my strategy is always like laying down loads of spikes or like incremental damage. So even if I
Yeah.
don't get a crit or something, then it'll just slowly be chipping away at their HP.
Wow.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you've been playing the Aspen game for longer than you've been saying.
I mean, you don't have to call me out like that, Joe. I mean, come on. It's like
Well, I mean that's your weakness, and I saw it. So okay, so we've talked about that now. This is how good of a weakness it is that we actually spoke more about the Pokemon one than we did about Kryptonite and we did about Venom, because even though that it's so like it's so big, video games have such a connection to the story, and although that like Superman's been around for way longer than Pokemon has, a lot of us have played the games, and even if you haven't, it's still that thing of if one person has it, it's that water cooler sort of discussion where you can go, yeah, and as I said with the shift tree thing, and as you were saying with you do incremental damage, and we were even just talking about rock paper scissors sort of style combat, and that's exactly it. Like weaknesses in storytelling are so important, and they're so important in video games because you need something to give you that adversity, to give you that challenge. I mean, hell, you could even say that in a lot of other video games that don't even have combat, you might have an object or a location or even a specific situation that you cannot get through because of something else. Like in something as simplistic as Beat Saber, if you hit the bombs, you'll lose points, and if you hit too many of them, you'll actually lose the game. Even if you get perfect hits on all of the other blocks. Obviously, if you miss any of them or mishit them, then you also lose your time. It's similar to Guitar Hero. So I mean, again, it's that thing of everything has a weakness, everything has a limitation, and everything has an obstacle. Like that's what a weakness is an obstacle or a specific thing that grounds the story, or at least grounds the players or the protagonist, meaning that there's a way to sort of humanize them, even if they're not human. Um, but as we've also seen with villains, it's a way to get out of the situation. For
You
instance,
gotta
we
have hope, haven't you?
exactly,
With these
exactly.
things,
I,
yeah.
I I think I think one of the best parts about Batman's villains is that if someone knows enough about their weaknesses, they can play on them, and that's one of the reasons why Joker is one of the most terrifying ones. He almost has no weaknesses because he has zero attachment to anything or anyone other than himself, and he
Batman.
doesn't have. Well, yeah, but even then, like if Batman isn't there, there have been moments where he still goes after the Boy
I mean,
Wonder and
I
the
I
they,
mean,
others.
they did.
I will say, yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah, go
We
on.
did see in one of the comics, I think it was like the Dark Knight Returns, I want to say, when Batman left and like there were no Robins, that the Joker essentially just went comatose
Yeah, he
years and
did. He
years.
just yeah, he did, and he woke up later when it was just like Batman came and he goes like, "Hello, darling." You know, he's finally been given purpose in life because
Yeah,
yeah, and it's like I don't know. I don't. I have issues with a lot of things, but that was pretty funny. I did kind of appreciate. Yeah, that's where the Joker went. It's like literally he has a obsessive, symbiotic relationship with Batman. Like he wants
weird,
to become
creepy love story that can never be.
yeah. And they did that in the video games as well, where like he meets Harley Quinn for the first time, and Harley thinks, Harleen thinks that he's talking about her in his kind of love letter, this
Oh
psychological love
yes.
letter, and it's no, he's talking about Batman, and it's just like, well, I finally found someone, and it's like,
But
I have to say, I mean, I have to say, the greatest thing about the Lego Batman movie was just that. Was there really bizarre love story that didn't happen? Remember
yeah,
that movie?
fair enough. I mean,
Be impressed
moving
by me, Batman.
awkwardly on.
I mean,
Notice me,
I mean,
senpai.
I was gonna say that, like, obviously we've talked about weaknesses, but like one of the main things that I think we'd be remiss is if we didn't actually talk about one thing is why are they so important? Obviously we said about the storytelling aspect. There needs to be challenge. There needs to be something that grounds the plot, and there needs to be some way of actually having it. Like, oh well, if they're unkillable or undefeatable, then how do you stop them? Like, for instance, if Superman had no weaknesses, he could just do everything, and there's no point in Batman or anyone else. But obviously, we have incredibly powerful villains or incredibly smart villains. But as smart as Lex is, without Kryptonite, there are certain stories where he just would not be a match for him. Now, obviously, in certain other situations, there have been times that he's completely, screwed over Superman without needing to attack him or harm him in any way in the terms of physiologically. But some of the greatest moments of him being defeated have been at the hands of people who have the physical power or the ability to alter the capability of combat. For instance, so the kryptonite suit and everything. So what I was actually going to say to you is, like, weaknesses that like sort of never really made sense to you. Like, this again, this is going to be more of an example podcast. Again, sorry for everyone who's like always listening to us rattle on about, oh, we've been talking about too many examples. This is probably going to be the most example heavy one that we've talked about, to be fair. But yeah. So what I don't know, like, Alex, what would you say would be the weirdest circumstance of a weakness that just didn't make sense to you?
well, I mean, that's the thing because a lot of weaknesses. if it's done badly, it becomes like a MacGuffin, basically. It's like, oh yeah, we have this unkillable thing, therefore, it is that. I mean, even for comedy reasons, like the only one I can really think of that was just used for comedy was in like Evolution, where it turns out that Head and Shoulders shampoo was the monster's weakness.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
advertising.
Evolution. That was a great film.
I mean, yeah, it was a great film, but it is sort of like, oh yeah, it has just the right chemical components to dissolve this creature, and I'm like, all right, I'll allow it because it's a comedy, and it's like, yeah, that's a funny thing. It's like they're washing away the thing, and then they after they defeat the monster, they all get like sponsorship deals
It was
and like make
just
millions.
it was just a very obvious advertisement in the guise of a movie, because it's just that moment. It's like, hang on a second, what is that? Oh, it's Head and Shoulders, and the two like campus like nut jobs come in. It's like, yeah, it's Head and Shoulders. That's what keeps our hair so luck and less
So
so
I mean, that
luscious.
should,
And it's that
I mean,
thing of
that should be
like
the
they
tagline of the.
have
That should have been the tagline of
hair.
the film. Head and Shoulders kills aliens.
Okay, like if that's true, if Head and Shoulders does end up killing aliens, I mean, I will be upset because I love aliens. Uh, but if it turns out that that's our weapon, fair enough. I'll give them that.
actually, yeah, your other one, the one that Sam came up with before, like the new Venom, where
Anti Venom,
yeah, well, no, it's the one where that's like,
lightning.
lightning. Yeah, lightning. It's like,
Oh
Ultimate.
yes,
why?
this one.
Oh, in the Ultimate Universe, there is the Ultimate Universe is Universe 1610, and it's like Ultimate Universe for the Marvel Universe, and then they of course have Spider-Man and Venom. Except Venom in this universe is not the alien that came from space, but instead a suit designed by Peter and Eddie Brock's father in an attempt to cure cancer, which I guess makes sense. I guess.
Yeah, fair enough.
But rather than having weakness to fire or sonic damage, instead it has weakness to lightning or energy damage, or like electricity essentially.
That is making me scratch my head really, because we had this whole argument and stuff about if it's related to fire, but no, it's just like, okay, so it's not fire and sonic damage and lightning, it's just lightning.
I mean, I think I'm not. I know Sonic definitely doesn't hurt it because he did fight the Shocker once, or 80s punk rock Shocker that is the Marvel Ultimate Universe,
Yeah, I
and
get
he just
it.
kind of pretty much he just kind of said, "Oh, that tickled." I
It
don't think fire hurts him, but I don't want to say for definite because
it's
I mean,
can't
yeah, it just seems like an odd
can't.
choice, really. Like,
uh,
'cause, like, yeah, go on, Joe.
I
Sorry.
was I was just gonna well no I was just gonna say like one that never made any sense to me was Silver for werewolves and all that lot. Like it made sense for salt, for ghosts and stuff like that because it's like it's an element that is pure. Like it's a pure element. It's used to also purify wounds and so on and so forth and stuff like that. But like it's like raw iron and silver. Like I have to assume that's because of its pure or raw material. That is that like I don't know like that connection kind of always kind of I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that weakness in when they use it in Supernatural. You love that weakness in a lot of other different shows. I mean, hell, you even get to use it in Neo, the samurai ninja game that I love
I,
so much. But yeah, it never. I don't know. The connection always kind of felt a bit off to
I mean,
me.
is it a religious type thing?
I
Because I
think
know that
so.
it must be from that, because it does
Uh,
get all connected up. Because you know why vampires can't see their reflections?
Yes, because it's back in the old days, it was actually mirrors were made from or with silver.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think that's because, it must be to do with like, because also there's crosses and stuff that they don't like. So that I think that the idea was that it
Well,
was
they were
connected to the
unholy
church.
creatures.
Yeah, they were unholy creatures, and silver was like, associated with holiness. And so if you just fill them with holy bullets, then, that makes some kind of sense. It's like, well, if you just like if you put loads of holy stuff on them, then an unholy thing will die. And that must be where it's from, but I do feel it is, like, a bit So it's especially strange now that they still carry on the vampire trope of not being able to see your reflection because they don't
Yeah, I
do that
think it's
anymore.
because the original misnomer came from a specific area, and they just went, "Oh, we'll just run with it. It's a funny little gimmick." And they
Like,
also go as far as to state that it works with cameras. Like they take pictures on the cameras, and they go, "Oh, no reflections or no things on the cameras." And it's like that doesn't make any sense. Like
it's
there's
just,
no silver in this camera.
I mean,
it's just
well,
like,
that comes from a different thing. I think that comes from the myth that if you don't have a soul, you don't have pictures taken of you because, like, the camera captures the soul, and therefore, if you photograph someone without a soul, then they won't show up. Which
It's
again is just
it's
dumb. It's
funny
just doesn't
because
work.
that actually also then comes from a further thing of stating that the camera captures the soul, being the idea that oh, we'll capture this moment, and people are like, oh no, I don't want pictures to be taken of me because my soul will get sucked into the camera or into the photograph. It's like, no, capture as in like capture the moment as in like, oh, we've got let's have this memory as a physical tangible evidence of this memory. And that's where that misnomer came from, where people believe that like, oh, it will take your soul or it will take your life or anything like this. And there's one thing that is interesting of that is that because of that they then use it as a weapon against ghosts in like Japanese folklore, where you can take a picture of a ghost and they'll be stuck in the picture, or they will temporarily be stuck, and therefore like when they leave, they will be sent back to a specific location, or they'll be trapped in the location that you've taken a picture of. Like, oh, as long as this picture isn't destroyed, they're stuck in this hallway forever, sort of thing.
they do have a video game.
Yeah,
Fatal, I
Fatal
think called like
Frame.
Fatal
Yeah,
Frame, I think it's called.
yeah, they have
Oh,
a bunch of those.
yes, I forgot
They're
about that.
so
And
cool.
and I was going to say, speaking of things that just kind of appeared, was their weakness to sunlight, which
Oh yeah.
Yes,
that was
yeah.
that did not come from vampiric folklore.
No, no. Where does it come from?
That came from I think it was 1930s. The film Nosferatu, which
Right.
was
Yeah.
they didn't own the rights to Dracula, and in the book Dracula wasn't actually hurt by sunlight. He was weakened, like he didn't have all of his powers, but he also didn't cast a shadow in sunlight. And the filmmakers for Nosferatu couldn't do that with their technology at the time because it was the 1930s. So they thought, well, we can't do shadows, so how about we just do it that the sun hurts him because he's ugly and he's makes sense. The
Just
vamp,
because he's ugly.
that's why he's asleep during the days because sunlight will hurt him. We'll go
Because
with
he's
that idea.
ugly.
I mean, yes, the
I lo
Nosferatu is ugly.
I
You've
mean,
seen him.
well,
It's
yeah,
got
in
Count
Vampire
Orlov.
Masquerade, that is actually a legit disadvantage to being of the clan Nosferatu is
Oh,
because you're just so ugly.
by the way, I should reframe. It's actually 1922.
Oh,
That
fair
was
enough.
me.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it, yeah.
I came from that film, which was that sunlight hurt them. Before that, it
Oh.
did.
Well,
That
put
makes
That's
sense. That makes sense for a movie's perspective, but yeah, it just kinda stuck and it doesn't make sense anymore just because of that
like,
one iconic movie.
and I should say, they even mention it in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the film based on the movie,
I you know,
based on the book. They even have to
I
say,
I erroneously thought that that was just them making excuses at the time, just like, "Oh, yeah, they wanna film Gary Oldman in sunlight, doing things, so they have to
yeah.
do this little disclaimer of like, 'Oh, actually, vampires can walk around in light.'" And I was like, "Oh, bullshit, that's not a real vampire." But
I
now
Now
I
you
mean,
was
know.
turns out I was wrong,
yeah, I mean,
Now you know the truth, and knowing is half the battle.
well, as once a wise man once said, "Put on those shades and wave to yesterday. The sunlight hurts my eyes." So
Also, can I say my one that makes no sense?
go on then. I thought the sun one was, but go on then.
Oh, no. I mean, that does have a hint of that
I mean,
does
yeah,
make a
you were
point.
I guess you were bouncing off of mine. So yeah, just go for it. What's yours?
And, have any of you seen Mars Attacks?
No.
Oh,
The
yes!
great,
Yeah, that's
the
about
great
oh,
Tim
you're
Burton
right.
movie.
Yeah,
In
it's
it,
it's great. Yeah, go on.
aliens invade because from Mars, and they wear these helmets, and they're very goofy, and they have like this speech thing where they say, "I want to help you," as they're disintegrating people. It's kind of like it's a bit of a joke film, and they're defeated. I'm not lying to you here. They are defeated by country crooning, crooning music.
Ooh,
They're defeated by the song "Indian Love Song."
yeah. I must
Which
say,
makes their heads explode
I
for
mean,
reasons I
in
don't
fair,
know.
in fairness, that's also my weakness. My head explodes when I hear that song.
I
It's
mean,
awful. I mean, well, no, I can explain that. I can sort of explain that because
explain it to me.
because Joe, because Joe and Sam, because this is a form of sonic damage.
No,
Like
it's not. It's coming from a
it
literal
is.
speaker.
No,
How
it
is
isn't.
that killing them?
They blast it out, and it goes at exactly the right frequency. There, because they're immune to most sonic damage except that one frequency that Indian Love Song has.
I'll allow it.
Uh, I mean,
Okay, the main reason that I'll allow it is because there are certain frequencies that can hurt dogs' ears, and there are certain frequencies that can hurt ours.
thing it
There are also certain
is though.
frequencies that can hurt other creatures that we either can't register or are absolutely normal to us. And it's not
I,
due to volume. Well, could be due to
I would,
volume, but we'll never
I
know.
would accept that if the song had one frequency and there had exploded that one exact frequency, but it explodes randomly as the song goes on,
But
as he
it
says,
goes because it
"I'm
keeps going. It goes.
calling you."
It's a mixture of the different
Yeah.
fluctuations of sound frequency, Sam. Gosh.
There. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
mean,
I gesture towards Joe and his
Have you ever?
explanation.
I'm now about to completely ruin this by making an anime reference. Don't get on my side just yet.
yes,
Have you ever
no,
seen Naruto? Because they use that with the
no,
Rasengan. It's just literally, hey, here's a water
no.
balloon. Make the water rotate in multiple directions so fast that eventually the water balloon just bursts in your hand because the water is just changing currents so quickly. So, if we can just take that with air vibrations from
Did
a
they sing Indian
song.
Love Call to do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just
Exactly.
yeah, it's exactly Indian Love Call to do that. Just go with it. Like, just go, just accept that as the explanation.
I should say I love the film. That does not take
I
me out
love
of the
it
film
too.
at all. The fact that that's the thing that kills them, it
Good.
just makes no sense. Because, but it's
I
a
know.
great
I mean,
film.
I like it better that could actually be like the actual explanation. That's what I always thought. It's just it does exactly the right frequency to do like the whole Naruto thing of like that's their one weakness. That I mean, their other weakness is that they can't survive in our atmosphere. So if you just destroy their helmets, they'll just die of asphyxiation.
I mean, I should say
But
they do, or unless they have their magic chewing gum with like carbon dioxide in it.
oh yeah,
Okay,
again
that's
that's
pretty cool.
kind of that is
That is
cool.
pretty cool.
I highly suggest you watch Mars Attacks. It is a delight. It
Okay.
is like one of my favorite movies. It's so goofy, and believe it or not, was based on a Topps card game. Like all of it was like all of these things are like based from what they could glean from the Topps card game.
I mean, if you want to, if you want to see Tom Jones singing with aliens dancing in the background, sure, it's the film you want to see.
I would say it's not unusual.
or just them just destroying various landmarks while taking photos in amusing poses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they invented the selfie pretty much. Just
yeah,
Well, either way,
and head bowling.
either way, I mean, it's all that thing of like weaknesses don't have to
as to why
necessarily.
the MacGuffin of them dying from this.
I mean, weaknesses don't necessarily have to always be something that makes sense, as we've just proved here. Like some of the best multitudes of different folklores, obviously, as we said, the silver, soul, iron, like the sunlight, a random specific song, or even just it's that thing of it doesn't always necessarily have to make sense. It's just that thing of hey, this is their weakness. At least there we go. That we've got something. So in tabletop RPGs, in D&D, in Call of Cthulhu, in heck, even in our system in Anime Tales, there are multiple signs of obviously weaknesses that we can use. For instance, in D&D, obviously you have the different forms of science and magic, and one of the biggest ones is obviously counterspell. Dead magic. All these different things of just like where you can just neutralize and nullify magic. And that's like the main usual weakness. But there are other things such as limitations, like concentration. You need to keep concentrated on the spell, or you need to give up certain materials, transmute things, actually have a physical object to be able to perform this act on. Even necromancy has the downside of, yeah, it doesn't work unless if you have a living or dead subject, something that was of the flesh at one point in time, or still currently is. Um, so I mean, you got a multitude of different ones, but my question to you is, if you were to create a character, let's say obviously using the Animite Tale system or not, it doesn't really matter. But if you were to create a character with a special ability, what would their weakness be? Would it make sense, or would it be something outlandish? Would there be multiple, or would there only just be one?
Well, I mean, this is kind of difficult because, with the Animite Tale system, which I quite like, is that for every advantage you have to take a weakness. So you can, in fact, create something that is very, very powerful, but you'd have so many weaknesses, and I'd get kind of like sort of fatigued keeping track of them all the time. It's like, like I'd feel like, the ultimate glass cannon. I just sort of like I'd have all of this power behind me, but I just trip over some animite and then I'm dead for good. It's like, yeah, that's for all the thing. Yeah. And knowing my luck, that's exactly what would happen. It's the same thing, like, I was arguing about this with Sam, about the weakness for, like, uh, you know, stake target or whatever, that I forget what it's called, but in the Vampire the
Oh
Masquerade,
yes,
you can get a
yes.
weakness.
Oh,
Yeah,
in Vampire the Masquerade, if you stake a vampire, they don't actually die. They go into
unless unless you get that weakness, which is stake having, where you can be one hit killed with
yes.
a stake, and it's like, you'd think, yeah, but when are we gonna go against, like, stakes,
Yeah.
stages and stuff? It's like, you just know
No,
we will fall into a pit of vampire hunters,
I
and
mean,
they will all be carrying stakes, and you will
We will
get
get
sniped.
I
to
should say,
that. We'll get to the second half of that in a second. We'll talk about the weaknesses, and then we'll get into them being used against you. We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, but that's would be my thing. I think that if I was going to create, something, usually how I've done it, like, I did actually create a character called Zoot that had a lot of advantages, but a lot of disadvantages that ended up being their undoing. They were an alien that couldn't breathe in our atmosphere, and, as soon as the suit was just damaged, they would take, like, immediate exposure damage, and also they'd have a weakness to fire as well. So naturally, what happened is that I threw myself into danger at the wrong time, and I got completely eviscerated, like, in just a matter of seconds because I was out of my element. Which, I do like, the amoebians as like a species. I came with the whole lore and stuff, and I did quite like Zoot, but it was like so difficult to play them because they were like they needed to work in a specific situation, and because like I had to like, I didn't
They
really.
were very gooey.
Yeah, they were very gooey. Yeah, that's the word. They were essentially goo. And while they could do all these cool things, you never got to see all the cool things because I was goo, and I died very quickly.
However, in the Animite Tale system, known as unique attributes or physical attributes, depending on if a unique attribute is something that is added later on, or is something that alters the way that a character, a species, or a power plays, or works or functions mechanically. Physical attributes are actually something that comes with when you create your own alien or physical race that you're playing as, like a creature, a monster, or even a humanoid like being that isn't a human. We also have anthropials that are actually like mutated through animite, but they actually get like a later evolution ability called high anthropialism, where they gain more of their sort of thing that they're supposed to be anthropomorphic personifications of. They become more anthropomorphic, I guess you could say, to their original sort of standpoint, sort of like, oh, I'm a bird person, and then later on they get like bigger wings or more talons or something like that. Like that's high anthropialism. But then you also have the actual things of like kobolds. As Sam, you're playing as using the alien race system that we're building. You're playing as a playable creature, a kobold. You're category 1, which basically means that your race can be no taller than 1 meter tall. You have less health and less stats, but then you like okay, well, since I'm not human, I have to alter how I'm gonna be and all this lot extra
Yeah.
squishy. But you wanted to play
Yeah.
as this character for the sake of I want to play as something different, and obviously you get an advantage of if there is anything that is really small, you can squeeze in it really easily. You're a lot lighter, so people can pick you up without needing a strength check. You can, in certain situations, be a lot harder to pick up or notice in stealth situations, and because that you're lighter, certain traps won't be triggered depending on the situation of your rolls. So it's all these things of these are eventually culminating into the storytelling aspect as well as the mechanical aspect. But with the unique attribute system and also with how you made Zoot, you created some downsides, and this is the way that we have it. Each downside grants you a new upside. For instance, a weakness to something can give you a new ability. We had it that like a couple of the things that you had like a few extra super intelligence, which gave you a higher modifier than you could get naturally with your normal character levels and naturally through the dice that you would normally roll. But it also means if you ever roll against anyone else who's using intelligence or wisdom against your intelligence, you can roll advantage. So it was always this thing of you had this. You also had the thing of physical damage doesn't hurt you. You're immune to it. And as we say, like you either have a damage resistance or a damage immunity. And a damage immunity costs two downsides.
Not to mention as well, I can survive in like zero oxygen
Yes,
environments
because
as
your
well. So
environment
in
is you actually need a specific gas or no gas because every other gas kills you.
yeah, and also another thing that I never got to try, which was very sad, which I was kind of interested in. I wouldn't mind playing another amoebian at some point because I do quite like them, but in a different scenario, I think where uh they had like specific like species only willpower moves. Like they kind of like the way that
Yes,
they moved about was a kind of sort of semi psychic, willpower based
they
system
could
where
they
yeah.
could they had like telekinesis no telepathy through technology
Yeah.
technopathy where they could
Yeah,
hear the thoughts of the
technopathy, that's
data.
it. Yeah.
Sort of like their brains were like Wi-Fi routers.
Exactly. And they were all connected into the thing again, it is kind of like because it is kind of cool from a species perspective, from a player perspective. I was playing one of these aliens that was like so far away from the Wi-Fi hub of their species that they couldn't really use any of these things, and like they were just so vulnerable. And like again, on one hand, I'm like not so gutted because I don't think we had enough because I was just kind of getting a bit tired of playing them, but at the same time, I was so gutted when they died because it was like, ah. You killed the baby.
It was
I
a
mean,
shame.
to be honest, Alex, whenever we do the campfire ones, we are going to have to mention him and Abercrombie and
Oh
their
my
history.
god, yeah, we came up with a whole
The
backstory
law of
about them.
Abercrombie. Yes, yes. Stay tuned in for when we actually do release those. With our first episode, thanks to Alex, has told the story of Dr. Satine. But yes, Campfire Stories will have many different guests on. We've already got a couple of different ones, such as Coming Soon Entertainment, aka Coin, aka the artist for the Animite Tales. We've also got Juice and hopefully Cool Boy Shane. We have a couple of others, but until I get their schedules confirmed, I don't want to spoil anything yet. But yes, where we talk about stories, and then we also have a little discussion after it. So if you guys are interested in that, check that out. It's on YouTube. Sorry, just gonna plug there
No,
shamelessly.
it's fair. No.
Sam, if you could make a
Yes,
weakness,
Connor, watch that.
if you could make a weakness for a character, or weaknesses for a character, would you? And also, how would you do so?
Oh yeah, everyone needs a weakness. Everyone needs a weakness of some sort. Well, it depends on the character. I mean, even your favorite character, the Flash, has weaknesses.
Oh yes, yeah.
Like cold.
Would it be like, just one weakness per thing? Like you just have, you
I,
have like loads of
I
advantages, but just one big
would
weakness.
no, I would say it depends. Like Superman has more than one weakness. Actually, believe it or not, he has weakness not only to kryptonite, but to red sunlight.
A
Red sunlight, he
planet with
loses his
higher
powers.
yield of gravity as well, depending on the situation. Because there was also a thing where
Because
they
they
said
did
like half of his strength came from the lower yield of gravity.
They even did it in the cartoon once. They did a character who just filtered the sunlight so only red light came out. Superman just kind of became normal man.
I remember that one.
It was a good episode.
Normal
And,
man.
like I should say, gradually he lost his powers, so
Yeah.
he still won the day, of course, because he's Superman, and because it's a kid show, they couldn't have him die. Yeah, everyone has a weakness. Like every superhero, mostly to counterbalance the fact that they are super weakness. I'm trying to think of other people with like John, the Martian Manhunter is weak to fire. He's
Yes.
also able to walk through walls and all these other things. So everyone needs a weakness of some sort, especially these superly overpowered ones.
So Sam,
The ones that are,
what would your weakness be had you create a character? If you were to create a character, or if you've already made a character, what would your weakness be that you'd think that you'd make for said character? For the sake of storytelling and or the sake of the mechanics?
I don't think I've made many characters with a weakness. I don't
I
think I've
can
made any characters.
mean,
I don't
other
think I've really
than
made.
I can only
I
think
don't
of
know. This is
one.
your kobold character. I mean, they're
I mean, yeah,
big
but he doesn't really have anything super about him.
It's more
He's a weak
limitation.
man.
I'd say that his ability is more of a limitation. I actually know that of one character that does actually have a weakness, but I wanna know if you've got any before I bring that one up.
I mean, cover and gravity.
No, although oh man, I really wish I'd done that just to troll you now.
Yes. I would. Uh, well, again, it would depend on the character, but I guess. Pretty much the. I don't know. Actually, I've not really made characters with obvious weaknesses. Besides, like, there was the Living Sea, which was weak to electricity because he was essentially just Hydro Man.
Yes, yeah. That actually was the one that I was going to say, which was Hydro Man, because he can turn himself into water. His biggest weakness was either being frozen or being electrocuted. And obviously, like that never really came up at any point. I think maybe once he might have got hit by
And stupidity.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
considering he was beaten by the fact he was just like, yeah, I forgot my whole history.
90
I'm going to
90% of your
form
characters.
I'm going to form an a cappella quartet and just sing on this boat as 4 people.
I mean,
because that's yeah,
fair enough. I mean, okay, well, for my examples, I've got a couple of them. In the Omegan system, because we actually have like sort of a demigod-esque super creature builder. We also have the husks, which are heavily mutated. Obviously, you've got the superhumans as well. So you've got like 3 different, if not 4 different species of superpower using character types. You've then got the humans, the cyborgs, and then obviously, build however you want. You can technically make playable creatures that aren't humans. But the biggest weaknesses to all things are anything with animite in their system actually has the weakness of animite. It adds an extra damage. Well, I guess it is not necessarily unblockable if you have a shield or armor that it doesn't penetrate through. But it is something that no power, regardless of how good it is, can ever grant you a resistance or an immunity because those powers come from animite. If you have animite in your veins, animite radiation, even just it like is inside of your DNA, it is that thing of it is going to react to the stuff in your DNA and it is going to create an intense pain. That's what the law states for it anyway. That's how I've written it. That it's sort of like almost a radiation, or even it's crystallized into the DNA strands of each creature that is affected by it. And every time that they get hit by animite weapons or animite is used as an actual offensive thing against them, it multiplies the pain that they feel and amplifies it, and it is an intense pain that no matter what, it always hurts them. But because that their powers originate from it, they will still be hurt by it. We even said that like an intangibility user is passing through or no longer tangible to the same factors of space. But because that animite is the origin of that power, when it goes past them, it connects to them and it literally just it just that thing of like, yeah, it doesn't physically hurt you, but as it passes through what space that you're technically occupying, even if you're not tangible to it anymore, it increases this pain even more. So it's that thing of like, either way, Animite is still a big weakness. Even going to the point that Bill, my brother, he made a character who could sort of like store up powers in his body, and it's like, yeah, I've basically broken the system. But he had a unique attribute where he could keep on adding powers to himself, and mutating him further and further. But the more mutations he took on, it's like, yeah, the next time you get shot with a bullet made out of animite, or a sword infused with it, or even a beam from it or something, your character will pop like a balloon. Like, there's
I
no
mean,
way
that
that you can
literally is
sustain
his
that.
kryptonite. Like
Yeah,
Animite,
yeah.
the gem is his kryptonite. And
And
I would love to see that though. I wouldn't like to see that because I'd like to see him keep playing Nathan, but that would be just like the ultimate, kill. Just like this ultimate powerful being full of all the powers of the world, just literally the king of the world. But that's just the sniper, like hundreds of meters away with one animite bullet and just get him right between the eyes and just and exploding like Tetsuo from Akira, just like whoa.
I'd have to say the other one is in the Omegan system, because again, like, it's sort of like they're kind of the equivalent of sort of demigods. Because you've got like the husks that are sort of like more like monsters and demons, and then you've got like the Omegans, which are kind of like demigods. They have meta powers like time, manipulation of the dark, the light, the four destructive elements of extreme hot, extreme cold, electricity, and photons. And it's this thing of like, man, they have so much power, kinetic energy, fire, all this stuff. And it's like this thing of like, their weakness is whatever element they're using. If they get hit by the opposite element, they take multiple times damage. For the Void Children, they cannot manipulate light. No, they cannot manipulate dark. If light is currently hitting or covering their body, that does passive damage of at minimum 1 point. And the same with the Animal Children, who can generate and manipulate light. If they get covered in or hit by darkness, they can't generate or manipulate light anymore. They still have some of their other abilities, like super strength and energy sensing, but they cannot manipulate or generate any of their elements if they are covered in the opposite elements that they are to do with. Time Children's biggest weakness is both range and tactile contact. If they're holding or touching another living creature that is not able to move through stop time, they cannot stop time. And this didn't really play in that many times until I think it was like one of the last times that we had Alfie in one of the games. We actually had it that he was playing his Legion, and he actually got rugby tackled by someone, and he tried to use time stopping, and it didn't work because this creature that was on him cannot move through stop time, and because of that, it's like, I can't phase through time until it's done. I'm just gonna have to go for a sec. I'll let you guys finish discussing real quick. Hang on a second.
All right, Joe's gone. Let's talk about Legend of Korra.
No, never Legend of Korra. Actually, I should say one thing. There is only one good thing that came out of Legend of Korra for me.
I mean that hurts,
I mean,
but go on.
I should say I only saw like the first series and then
I mean,
nothing else.
see more of it. I will say that. I mean, like Joe will have differing opinions, but I say yeah, definitely see what, especially the third series, which is just truly the best.
Just no.
Ugh.
Just hated by all.
Don't worry, I'll sit here with my Legend of Korra body pillow and cry.
Wait,
That's fine.
you're talking to me. I have things I love that none of you seem to like.
I mean,
Like
yes.
Charlotte, that none of you have seen.
Well, we will see it eventually. I mean, it
Or,
is our weakness, to be honest. It's like
or, or Angel Beats.
Angel Beat. Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've not really gotten into Angel Beats, to be honest. I mean, I'm sorry, that is true. It is sort of like,
Or
yeah.
I know you love to cry, Alex. Watch
I
that
do
and you will cry. You will feel the tears of shame. Not shame, tears of
It
sadness.
is a shame.
Sorry, sorry, I'm thinking of something completely different now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, so no. Yeah, just Hyde's hentai collection. Yeah.
Uh, no, you know what I
Different
mean.
genres. I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, go on. Your thing about Legend of Korra. What's the cool thing?
Well, the only thing that came out was a fan fiction one they did was Spider-Man in the Legend of Korra, and that's the only good thing that came out of it.
That's not even.
You
Go
should
on.
say, with like the technology of that era, of that like time frame, like cars and like people just wielding fire bending and air bending and water bending and all that.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, actually, would it be like a weakness and stuff to have these? I mean, I don't think it would, but if you had like the right technology and stuff, you could pretty much neutralize a lot of these things. Like I guess like knowledge being like a weakness and stuff. Like you don't know how to like use your powers within the current framework. That's also a thing with
I mean,
with like in vampire mechanics as well, where like one of the downsides is that you're such an old vampire, you don't know you're basically a boomer and you don't
yeah.
know how to work any technology and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, because you're so old, you haven't adapted to the modern world. You're just like, oh,
yeah,
it's like that what we do in the shadows, like that joke about like he's a bit old and he's got some weird ideas of the world, and then next frame, we should just get some slaves.
oh my god. And it's like, yeah, I mean, also there was another thing where it's like your body, as a vampire, it doesn't have like a pulse or any heat or anything, so you can't use like touch screens or anything. Which is
Yeah, that
like,
was the thing we didn't know.
it seems like such a small thing, but that was such a detriment. It's so, it was so annoying. I had to like get all of you with to like work
Yeah,
my
the
phone
thing
for
is
me.
though, if you just use Blush of Life like a normal person, like everyone should do, Blush of Life, we should say, essentially allows you to appear alive by giving you a heartbeat and some warmth. And you still look like you're seriously sick, but you have like some of
It is so bad. It is so bad because I never even considered that because it's like, yeah, that's going to be a huge detriment to you if you don't look alive. If you look like a walking corpse, like not only can you not use touch screens, like I said, and you don't have a heartbeat, that's going to be a problem. Like people are going to think of you suspiciously, like regardless of whether, even though you're walking about, it's like, oh man, you look real bad. Like, you stink a little bit because you're a but it's like. And it's an extra detriment to me because I chose the stigmata downside, so if I get to a certain I don't think I've ever been at a point where I haven't bled at some point, like, basically blood starts coming out of your forehead and your hands and your feet, like, when you
at
get
Hunger
certain levels.
4.
And Hunger Force, but I've always been I started off, the dice roll, started me off at Hunger 4 anyway, and I've just always been at Hunger Free. So, like, I'm always one step away from going full bleeding again, and, like, that's why I don't use Blush of Life, because if I don't succeed on that roll, I start bleeding out the head again. So,
I mean, I should
that's
say if
actually
you
been
fail on
quite
that
nerfing.
roll, you could be number 4 and then number 5, and at that point, I think the beasts take over.
Yeah, they
And
start eating
that's it.
everything. Oh,
Got like
the
a creature
sucks.
inside you that is the monster that tells you to eat and kill and such.
Is
I
Oh,
mean,
this
it
5,
is
that's
a
it.
bit fun.
is this Vampire the Masquerade? By the
Yeah.
way, I am back. I posted on the
Okay.
stream chat, but yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
back.
I'm just thinking, yeah, I just thought it was I mean, it is just kind of funny as a weakness because I thought, yeah, that's a really cool weakness and it'll be just, interesting, narratively if we do that. But I didn't reckon on always being at Hunger for most of the time. So there's never been a session where I haven't bled everywhere
Is this
and
Vampire
thus
the
outed myself.
Masquerade by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought so.
with
Yeah, I've heard some
it's a
things.
this is a coins game where
Oh yeah. Oh,
he asked
also
us
yeah, go on. Yeah.
in the first session. He asked us to roll like a dice to see what our hunger was. We didn't actually know it was the hunger dice at first. I got a 3. Alex got like a 9, I think it was, or an 8.
Yeah.
Which I thought, oh, Alex has won here. They got the best one. They said, you know what? Divide that by 2. That's your hunger. I got, oh, I'm
I
1.
was like,
Alex, 4 immediately bleeding out everywhere, out of every
yeah.
orifice, and the hands and the eyes and the head and everything.
It was the best. And like after that, the second session as well. Guess what else I rolled to increase my hunger? And I had to roll a rouse check as well, so it's like, yeah, I'm just constantly bleeding all of the time, and I'm like, "This is hell. This is actual hell."
I mean, it's funny that you bring up Coin, because the first ever one shot they ever did with us, which I'll try and get this from Des again, so that then all of you can see. It actually has me, my younger brother Bill, Coin, uh, Coolboy Shane, and Rorik from Item Pouch, all playing a one shot where they're playing as villains trying to pull off a bank heist.
Oh, yeah, I remember that,
And
yeah.
honestly, I absolutely loved every single one of their characters. We had Rorik playing as the shapeshifter with like super strength. We had Coolboy Shane playing as Moonstralisk, who was a berserker or an archling who had like enlargement, super strength, and all of this other like. It was just a really freaking big tower of a creature. We had my brother playing as Podio, who was an Oracle Time Child who could move forwards in time and had stupid high super decks. That would honestly probably put Legion to shame. And then we had Coin playing as Zane, who was this vampire. This sorry, I'll have to let me get this right. Fat vampire dragon dude who carried around a giant gun that was a fish tank full of piranhas that launched piranhas at people. And it's eloquently named the Piranha Gun.
I mean,
I love
Okay.
Coin's
what
imagination.
else would it be called, to be honest? I mean, that's amazing.
But the reason
But
as to why I bring this up is because he had a weakness. Two weaknesses. Sunlight, which he would take 1d4 of damage every turn, and light or fire, which he'd take 1.5 times or 2 times damage, respectively. So he had these abilities where, like, if he bit someone, he could drain more health and he could heal himself more. So it's like all of these different abilities that he created. He had downsides to every upside he created. It was great. It was absolutely great. No spoilers as to what happens to any of the crew, but if you guys want to watch it, I will try and get it from Des, and I will post it onto the Betarians channel so that you guys can actually see it, because it is one of my favorite things. We have quite a few mechanics that now that they didn't have back then, but it was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. All of those guys are great. Check out Item Pouch. Check out Corpo Shane, and definitely pay tribute to the absolutely fabulous, wonderful, and wacky Coming Soon Entertainment. They're absolutely fantastic. Love them all. They're brilliant. But yeah, so weaknesses in tabletop RPGs do create an interesting thing of like, oh man, this is bad. My favorite one, which I'm going to talk about the last one, and then I'm actually going to go into the final bit of this discussion. So my favorite one is actually talking about when a character seems weaker than everyone else, like limitations to powers. Now, not even because, as we said, weaknesses in storytelling. We're not just going to talk about their weak points, things that are the, like, as we said, kryptonite. Also talking about their weakness. And of course, we can't really talk about weakness without talking about Aspen.
yes.
So, um, just to shorten this, because I know that at some point you'll want to talk about them on your own, like maybe on another campfire story, or on another podcast or something. But just a long story short, Aspen Green, if you haven't seen the 24-hour campaign, which I honestly don't blame you because it's a very long campaign, it's like 19 hours.
Yeah.
Aspen Green had biology manipulation and nature control. They could control plant life, they could talk to animals, they could heal people by touching people and manipulating their flesh so it could heal, they could grow and reforge people's bones, all this other stuff. By the end of the game, or well, start all the way to the middle, even to the end of the first arc, because it was like a 2 arc campaign.
Mhm.
Everyone was making fun of specifically you, Alex, for making Aspen.
Yeah.
And there is a brilliant moment where I don't know if you remember this conversation, because we had Kane and Bill, we had Graham and Alfie, and we even had Siobhan, my partner. She also played, and every single one was like ripping into you, just going, "Oh, why do you still do a D8? You need to put some buffs because you can choose either to buff and increase your damage dice and your range, or you can get abilities which can add different special effects to your powers." Everyone was ripping into you, and I was like, yeah, I mean, Alex, you could do this. You could get more. You could get more dice, and you'd be able to milk more XP. And you're just like, yeah, but I really like this idea of this ability. I said, I'm not going to force you. Just go for whatever you want. Uh, and there was one point where I just looked at all the abilities that you had and went, Alex, I think you'll have a tool belt big enough that if you remember to do all of these things, there's very little that you won't be able to do. Uh, and it came to the moment of the Huskonian arc, the second arc, and there was a moment where I don't know if you remember this. There's a moment where someone took a grave injury. I think it was either Legion or someone else. They could not use any healing abilities, and it's like, yeah, like they've taken like this many injuries. Their bones are shattered, and you just went instantly use your powers. And thankfully, it worked because you had a very low modifier at the time,
Mhm.
and it just instantly all ailments gone. Everything was fixed, and it's like, oh yeah, the amount of health that you've got is very small, but you can now get back in the game. Your leg is no longer broken. Your severed limb at one point, you regrew your own severed limb. Uh, you literally fixed someone's damaged
Twice.
organs twice. Yes, twice.
Yeah,
Um,
no, actually 3 times because it didn't work the first time. I just kind of like I stopped the bleeding and made a stump, so I was like, "Oh, great, cut it off again." So it's
yes,
just literally just shaving bits off until it worked, and I still
and
I do love that actually. I mean, yeah, it is ultimately impressive because it's like something that was going to be this huge, life-threatening thing. It's like, "Oh, no, just regrow the limb, back to normal now." But at the same time, it didn't quite work, so I was like, "Okay, we'll just have to keep shaving it off a little bit more until we get the results we want," so
I it's really an impeccable story because so many people were ripping into you and saying like, "Oh, Aspen's the weakest one," and yeah, you were a glass cannon. You weren't a cannon at all. You were just
I was just
mush. Like
glass.
you weren't even glass because glass breaks. I mean, you just mulched every time. In fact, your character actually died, and we had the first real deep moment of there's no way of bringing them back. And thankfully, through the use of both of the two different Omegans that had one had time manipulation and the other one had a special ability where you could track other people's powers onto these special bands, so you could like store up people's powers onto them, like only small cheap imitations, but it was enough for them to bring Aspen back. And it was that thing of this really dark moment of we might not ever be able to fix what's happened. And afterwards, we saw this moment of just like everyone realized Aspen isn't the damage dealer. We should never have thought that Alex needed to buff up or increase your damage output. That's not who you're supposed to be. You were supposed to be the person that could fix anyone, rebuild someone back. And it was that moment that this weakness instantly seemed to be no longer a weakness. It seemed to be a thing that just everyone just went, who cares? And that's one of the things that I love the most. Aspen was a physically weak character, but in the terms of their heart, their drive, and their abilities, like how much utility they had, they were probably the best, if not the most powerful character in that show because they didn't have fancy time tricks. They could literally just regrow an entire body back. It was insane.
Possibly one of my favorite moments as well was the time when, admittedly, we were in a really bad situation and Phileas had to save my ass and Cosmos's ass. And like at the end of all of that, you know, he just sort of like de-transforms and like just falls onto a glass table and just says, "Heal me." Like he turns to Aspen and it's like, just just heal me. It's like you can do it. And I did, and after all that. And it's like that's the thing. I don't know, that's like sort of the thing where it's sort of like, Aspen being the constant puppy. It's like, no, this is what you do. You fix me, physically, so do it. And yeah, that was I don't know, that was a pretty sort of interesting moment where like the absolute MVP of the team had to rely on Aspen for
Yeah,
just one moment.
I mean, the one reason why I loved that was actually it was actually the timing of that was actually a little off. Is actually instead of him smashing into a glass table and then saying Aspen help, he powered himself up into this strenuous form, and the downsides for the strenuous form was after like he had massive boosts of power, but afterwards his body literally can't take it, so he detransforms and he's just like he basically can't move his body. He's basically paralyzed for a few minutes, but for a few hours, his body is exhausted. And he's like, Aspen, I really need you to help me. And the way that he does it, he says, I gently set them all down, and then Cosmos and you fix yourself because you get donutted by 10, one of the best villains, and at some point I will talk about him
Dan!
on one of these podcasts. And after you're healed, Phileas just like looks at you and goes, "Oh, good, Aspen. Yes, I need you to heal me. Okay." Immediately falls through the table. Glass shatters everywhere, and he's just face first into the ground. And it's that point where Aspen, you just say the greatest line that you didn't often get to say, but it was basically your catchphrase, was just Aspen fix, and I love that.
Aspen fix!
So yeah, changing from that weakness to suddenly that great power, because it's all that thing of what some see as weakness, others see as great possibility. I mean, hell, you can even say that like the weakness to kryptonite is really dangerous. But if you think about it, it actually kind of grounds Superman to this point of which he even gives pieces to certain Justice League members in case if he ever goes bad or in case if he gets mind control. That is him showing that he is a deeper character than most. That this thing that could very well kill him, he's like, yeah, instead of destroying it all, I'm going to give it to the people that I trust the most. And that's exactly it. Weaknesses can be used in multiple different ways to further a character development and further the storytelling. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is a term that I coined. Weakness grinding. Uh, oh boy, this is not going to paint me in the best of lights.
Go on.
But here we go. Weakness grinding is when you know that a certain lot of your players have weaknesses, certain limitations, and you play to those specific, not so strong strengths. For instance, as you say, the stake, the heart, the stake heart thing, uh, the heart stake thing, where it's like that's the weakness that can instantly kill you, and that gives you like a boost, or that could be one of your only weaknesses or something. And then, as you said, everyone is a bunch of vampire hunters who just only use heart stakes. And the term weakness grinding was coined in the forms of finding everyone's specific weakness either as players or as their characters and just going, oh, this army just so happens to have all these. And I hated that like so much that I did that a lot in the games. I know I'm not the only one who does this. In D&D, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I'm a paladin," and like one of the biggest problems is fighting the innocent. So there's a lot of things in this campaign where we have to fend off against innocent people who are being mind controlled by a very evil person. But my paladin has sworn an oath never to kill an innocent and or form to come to harm to them. And it's that thing of like, great, so the paladin's basically useless throughout the rest of this entire campaign until we go up against the big bad sort of thing.
I mean, paladins have other uses. They could be the meat shield, like, hey, over here, fight
like,
me,
but
attack me,
he,
and then they just like ineffectually whop against his shield while
It's
the
sort
other ones
of
actually do
railroading
stuff.
you. That's the thing.
it
It's kind of
sort of is.
railroading you into playing a certain way. It's like, you need to have a mixture because yeah, I think you do need some, challenge like that. You know what I mean? You do need
Yes.
some like you do need some sort of like thing if you just play to your strengths all of the time, then it kind of becomes boring. But the reverse is true. If you're just playing to your weaknesses all of the time, it becomes like, oh come on, it's a so you need I think it's just the lack of variety that I hate about that. Not necessarily, I mean, because I'm not gonna lie, it is
Yeah,
annoying when you're not in your element.
No,
It
absolutely,
is annoying.
absolutely.
But I wouldn't be exactly saying that that's fine. I'm okay with that. That slight challenge.
I think the worst one was, and I don't know if this is the same for you when I did this. The worst one for me was there was a moment where you guys were, I think it was either in Husconia or it was either another campaign like that or something. It was either in Husconia or it might have been in somewhere in the ACs. There was a moment where a lot of the time people were saying, "Man, these guys have a lot of weapons that can specifically hurt Phileas." Like spatial, which ignored his physical damage resistance, anomite, which is specifically very good against anomalies. Then again, most of you are anomalies. And it was this thing of like, oh wow, these guys, and then Legion goes up against an opponent that can fend off against time stopping, even though they weren't a time stopper. Although the way that we did that was more because of something else, and eventually it was that thing of like, okay, I've thrown out all of these characters who just so happen to have these abilities. Obviously, I didn't copy and paste them. Like, oh yeah, you guys are fighting against 10 spatial users and 17 characters who aren't made out of biological matter, so that Aspen can't use their powers. Or, oh, and they also have this ability to stop you using your powers and nullify physiology. I didn't do that, but I did just so happen to have it that a lot of the enemies did have abilities that the players couldn't just go, yeah, this is going to be an easy fight. Uh, Considering that a lot of the time their abilities were very good against common powers. Like, as I said, Phileas had fire and physical resistance. So fire and physical are some of the most common damage types. And he almost always fought against people who didn't have those damage types. So his defense was almost useless. But he'd obviously go up against certain ones eventually that would give him that. But then I created obviously a lot of characters with willpower, which basically they can imbue attacks with their own essence, and if they hit a biological life form, it actually counts as if their powers don't work. It doesn't nullify their powers, it just hits them and connects to them. And because of that, it's that thing of, okay, they get hit by this fist, it's as if the defense doesn't exist because it's their biology. It's hitting them and directly damaging their biology. If they wore normal armor, like actual plated steel armor, the willpower attacks would have no effect. But because that Phyllis was always just like, nah, I'm super buff, I don't need armor, because my armor is me. Whenever he went up against a willpower user, it was just like, yeah, I can ignore your damage resistance. And that's when we coined the phrase weakness grinding. And it was that thing of looking for the best way to make it so that there was at least some challenge. And I think I should have just been able to let go a little bit more as a DM. And I think a lot more DMs should do this. Even if you know that your team have the chance of not losing against this, or at least one specific person doesn't have the ability to lose in this fight, still go with it anyway. Because otherwise you have it where you're fighting against an opponent that say for instance, maybe one shots two players instantly, and you're immediately realizing, oh, those were the two strongest players, and now you have no idea what to do because no one else can defend against this guy. Not taking anything from any specific circumstance, of course.
No,
But,
you can say it's Warhead. It's okay. You're like, it's all right. I made a silly, okay?
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. You could have used range, but
I mean, yeah, you said even the character said, "Huh, should have used range, idiot."
But what do you guys have to add to this specific thing, like weakness grinding? Have you ever seen it before? Do you fear it? Do you have anything specifically against or for it? Do you understand it? Any particular?
I mean, yeah, having played in your games as well, it's like I kind of agree with you there. You could have just maybe let loose a bit more, because it is sort of like, yeah. I mean, it didn't have the level of a lot of challenge, but it did sort of get a little bit, it got a little bit sort of, soul destroying in the end because it's like there's just one thing. I mean, it's kind of weird because like in the 24-hour campaign as well, like a lot of the mini bosses were way harder than like the actual bosses.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, yeah, that guy. I mean, to be honest, I mean, as villains, they're really freaking and everything. But it's like, yeah, it's like they weren't put in like the right place. Like we ended up just absolutely trouncing the bosses. Whereas these mini bosses, they're still out there, and also I've made one of them immune to death, pretty much. Because
Well, immune to your powers
yeah,
specifically.
but it's like, yeah, I can't like screw them like that. Yeah, actually, they'll be immune to biokinesis. So like, ah,
Yeah,
wow, that throws a few spanners in the works.
for me, it's kind of a weird one. I mean, Sam, obviously you have made quite a few mistakes in the games before.
Hey,
and one of the one of the main things that you've done is that you've tried to undo those mistakes by then making further mistakes. But you have had some very good strategies. Whether they've gone off or not is entirely different. But your best strategy, I still hold to this day, is the one where you use cover, where you defeat an opponent and then you heal them. And again,
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much trying to turn your enemy into a friend. It's one of the most basic ideas of strategy.
But that creates
why
obviously. No, go on.
why kill what you can claim.
Exactly. I mean, obviously that created eventually the weakness of all these people that he had befriended. They could be used against him. Not that they were often used against him when he was alive, but still.
We never actually got to see him ever betrayed.
That's true. That's true. Which was sad? Question mark.
He was never betrayed, but I'm sad he didn't live long enough to at least almost get betrayed.
There we go.
If you get my meaning.
Yeah. So, this podcast has gone on quite a long time. But Sam, what about your opinions on the weakness grinding as I've named it?
I think I can't get to a point where it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Remember, it's like, oh, we're going to fight you. Oh, okay. Well, you can't fight me because I'm actually made of plastic, and you can't hurt plastic. And like, only one person in the group can actually hurt him. It's like, well, okay then, we're here. We'll over there, I guess. Okay. Do you want to get to it then? Smoke cigarettes. The fight over yet? Well, okay.
I can only say I'm sorry.
It does. It gets to the point. It does get a bit annoying at that point. Whenever,
I mean, it's like every single battle is like could be a fight about it, which lends a kind of mood to the whole thing. It just gives a whole sort of mood of like, yeah, it's just smoking a cigarette. It's like war is hell.
Yeah.
And even in small situations, like we were just having breakdowns over a fucking cactus. Like it was crazy. I mean, which also turned out to be a bastard as well.
Hey, we have yet to confirm anything about the cactus.
I mean, that's a story for the campfire, I think.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's like the great and benevolent cover.
It's like it is sort of like a double-edged sword because it is like the most memorable because like we were constantly just sort of like having anxiety attacks over every encounter, but at the same time it's like I must say it wasn't boring, but it was heart attack inducing.
It was one of those things that since it was pure anxiety the entire way through, it was that thing of when you look back at it was like, man, this was a very memorable campaign. But then, like, if you were to go back into it, it's like, man, this is a very painful campaign. It's very strange because of that. I think the moment that I started realizing that it was too much, and this is to all DMs and all players in any tabletop campaign, the difference between having an opponent that can use your weakness against you and weakness grinding is when it's either all of them have the exact opposite to your powers, meaning that you cannot fight, or multiple times in a row you are fighting against people or you're in situations where your powers, abilities, spells, or even class is useless. And that is when you start realizing, hang on a second, this is always pitted against me. Now, I'm not talking about like, oh, my character's a fishman, they can only breathe underwater. Every single fight that we're in is on land. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about as in like, say for instance, every single one of you are fish people, and it says, oh, your main weaknesses is the sun and dry land. So the first land that you go to is a desert land, and then every single situation is, by the way, here's another thing that drives you out, here's another thing that drives you out. Weakness grounding. They're just trying to basically always do things that only go against your weakness so that you can feel more vulnerable each and every time. So eventually, as both of you have said, it is just that thing of either you're sitting there waiting for your character to die, or you're sitting there on the edge of your seat just going, either kill me already or not, just get it over with!
That's the thing as well, is that you never actually feel, if you're only weakness grinding, you never actually feel like you're actually, powerful, or if you've got
Exactly, yeah.
any more powerful as you go along. Because as stories go, there is usually a line at a point where you do feel strong. In the beginning, it's normal for like, oh, we're fighting enemies that are tough. This is going to be hard. We're going to actually have to use our wits and our wills and But as you get higher level, you're going to be like, yeah, we can take these guys. You're like, yeah, really? Only goblins? 50 of them dead later. That was nothing. There should be a point where you feel, yeah, I'm strong. I could probably take these on. I could take on the odds. But if you're ever only fighting enemies that always counter you with abilities that you either can't fight or weaken you to the point of death, you're like, oh, okay then. I guess I'm always going to be useless.
Yeah.
It'd be like okay, like this is the one I was trying to say earlier, like Superman. He doesn't always fight people with kryptonite.
No.
That's the point, is that if he only fought people with kryptonite, he'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I'm quite weak. Then he just fights people who have laser guns, or like Parasite, or like various other foes. They're like, oh yeah, I can beat this guy quite good. Then he feels strong because he's fighting people that aren't just, oh, I weaken you by being near you.
The main reason that the sad reason as to the main particular reason as to why I used to weakness grind a lot, specifically in that campaign, and I try to lean away from it quite a bit more in the 8 Seas Villains campaign, which was because as I said again, when you guys were fighting against certain players, when you were playing as Zephyr, I think you only ever got hit by electricity damage once, ever. I mean, fair enough, you only played as him for like 4 or 5 sessions, but still, like, I never used anyone with electricity. I mean, to be fair, I had built most of the module up and most of the islands up before knowing what your confirmed characters were. That's another thing, is like, when you're building a campaign as you're playing through it, that can sometimes taint it. Weakness grinding, again, this isn't going to be good because this one character has this ability that completely stops every other ability, and it's it is an issue. But it's worse to grind against your players, make them feel more powerful, and then afterwards give them maybe a character or two, or a bunch of opponents or so. That is difficult for one or multiple players, not all of them. Because if it is all of them, they're not gonna have that much fun, or at least as Sam has said, they're not going to feel powerful, and also they're going to kind of feel like, what's the point? The last thing
also,
I will say,
make it different people. By the way, don't just make it the same person, or else it's like, oh, there's Superman, and then his amazing friends. It's like fighting like Superman, and then like there's just like the Scooby gang beside him, like, yeah, we're helping. We were there.
Yeah, because I mean, again, you have to, make sure that it's not always the same person. I mean, like when I had it originally, a lot of the time it was always focusing on, all right, I need to stop Phileas because he's the most powerful. Ironically, the ones that could fight Phileas could not easily fight Hawk, who could turn into electricity. So it's like, okay, willpower users, yeah, but that's the lazy man's like easy way out. Like that's almost nullification level of easy way out. so I had to work around different ways. But then when I had like a character who had rubberized or mineral weapons which didn't that didn't conduct electricity and could actually hurt Hawk, it was that thing of like, Yeah, but they're not all that great against Phileas. It's that thing of
Yeah.
I can't
You
win,
had to
and
split
that's
them
the
up.
thing.
You had to split the
Had
party
to split them up
eventually.
exactly. Yeah, you had to figure out different ways of countering them, and then having it that moment that the players feel smart when they go, let's swap opponents, and then actually being able to do so and fighting each other in different ways. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to fight this guy because his weapons don't work against me, and you're going to fight this guy because his fighting style is not attuned to yours, and all this lot. So, I mean, that's the best way of doing it, is trying to, if you are going to try and do this, make sure that there's a possibility that someone else in the party can fight them, and then give the other opponents, a chance to move around. Because at least if they then get taken out, it is that thing of everyone has to work that much harder to beat this person who is multiple or at least one person's weakness. Because again, Superman has defeated Metallo and has done many things despite being under the influence of, mind control, or under the pressures of kryptonite and stuff like that.
Finds ways around that. That's why he has his lead line suit.
Exactly.
Or just throwing rocks at him.
Exactly. Wait, what?
As Alex said, just throw rocks
throw
at him and
rocks
that will defeat him.
Dude, I would have defeated Superman years ago if I was in charge, but no one takes my ideas seriously because they're goofy and crazy. Like, oh, just throw rocks at them. Oh, that can't be that simple. No,
I mean,
it's true.
Alex, you are goofy and crazy, and that's why we love having you here at the podcast.
Super villain, Alex.
The only reason that I ever did this, though, and this is the bigger thing, and I will say this flat out: if you're doing a one shot, make sure that your players don't know what the final boss is, because otherwise they will then weakness grind against that. Now, this is the thing, which is the final tie up to the weakness in storytelling as part of RPGs. I made something called the Kiln, which is I wrote down a bunch of boss fights, and it was this thing that, like, it was just literally a one-shot campaign where literally each time that people wanted to play it, and we even still do it now every now and again, where if people just want to do a one-shot, then they're like, okay, here's a character, make a character. You and all of these other players, they've made characters at this level. Here's a boss. You fight them, you get to test out the gameplay, get to test out this character, and then there you go. And then next time someone wants to do it again, it's like, oh, okay, a bundle of other new players, they get to do this, and they could fight the same boss, or another boss, or anything like this, and so on and so forth. We even stated that we might actually do this at some point, which is like some kind of like team battles, where it's like, everyone has to fight against this like leaderboard of bosses, and, like, each time on the Discord server, they're marked off. And it's like, okay, this boss has been taken down by this team, and then, etc., etc. Whoever's team wins, like, gets a prize or something. But the one thing that I said to Alex specifically was, there was a moment where, Alex, you made a rubber physiology character with super dexterity.
Oh, yeah.
And, you also made a couple of other different characters as well. And at one point, You played as your other character. I can't remember who it was, but you played as your other character, not as this one. And you guys were all going up against a creature known as the Storm Bug, or the Storm Bird, or something. It's basically something that my brother came up for the Emjanarlinian Desert Country module, and it's a random chance of fighting this massive aerokinetic lightning bug. And its entire physiology is electricity, so the only way that you can fight it is elemental damage types, and so on and so forth. There's a couple of different weaknesses, and I'm not going to go into any of them, but obviously rubber is one of them. And after you guys got defeated, you then said at the end, can we fight this one again? I said, yeah, sure. And you went, awesome, I'm going to use my rubber physiology character. And I went, I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah, you said no.
Because...
because I knew it'd be too much of an advantage, and that's why I was
it was less of an advantage, and this is why I say this to all of those who know what the boss is. This is why I said no. Because as a game, although yes, it's boring to have it that, like, a lot of the time you're always fighting different opponents that have weaknesses. It's even more boring knowing there's nothing that this player can't do. There's nothing that this player can't do, and there's nothing that this thing can do to end up where the player can lose. So it's that thing of, because it could throw you around using aerokinesis, and since you were rubber, you were immune to physical force. You were immune to lightning damage, so there's nothing that it could do against you unless if it had blades or spikes or anything like that. And as I already confirmed, it didn't, because obviously it was just a big bug that at best it could potentially bite you, but since it's always made out of lightning, it's just electricity, which you're immune to. So it's that thing of like, I just went, nah, I mean, honestly, it's probably just going to be really boring. And you were just like, no, I don't see it. And I was like, okay, this thing can't kill you. So eventually you'll win. And I don't have a problem with you winning, but if it's like, it goes on for like 2 hours, everyone else is already dead, and you're still just rolling to just see if you can kill this thing, it would just be really boring to everyone else. Just going, Alex, we know that you're going to kill it. It's just, how long is this going to take?
It would be, yeah. I mean, that's why I was choosing it. It's like, yeah, I knew it would be unfair because it's like, yeah.
And there you have it, guys.
I just wanted to feel powerful.
Yeah, well, I wanted to feel powerful. I did
in a
when
campaign, I would have
college,
100% allowed that, but since you had prior knowledge and it was a one shot, I was like, no. But had it been in a campaign, had it just matched up perfectly, I'd have been like, all right, this is going to take a few hours. Everyone strap in, and it's just the thing of eventually Alex brings this thing down. It's like, yeah, that was awesome. But no, in any other situation, that would have been really depressingly long. Just like this podcast, sorry for it taking so long. I guess you could say timing is not exactly my strong suit. Perhaps it's my weakness. I hate doing these outros.
And if nothing else, I know Connor will love the fact this is long because it means that it will last probably into the end of his trolley day work.
Hey, that's good. And if any of you guys enjoy this, if any of you like this, thanks again for those who have been watching this and taking care of yourselves in this dark time. What are your favourite kinds of weaknesses in games or stories? Let us know in the comments and in the chat. Thanks very much to all of you who are watching and listening, and thank you again, Alex and Sam, for joining me on this podcast. Did you enjoy this subject then?
I did actually. I didn't think I'd get much mileage out of it, but we kind of did actually. We went from all kinds of directions of like, things that we've already played, and also just some things I didn't really think about. So yeah, neat.
I mean,
We can do another
I got to
podcast.
bring up Spider-Man again and Superman.
You didn't even get to your Greek,
Achilles heel,
essay again.
Samson
Yeah.
with his hair. There we go. Done.
Everyone knows Achilles' heel. The fact that his lover Patroclus went out in his armor. He said to like Patroclus, "Go out, fight the first wave, and then come back, or else then bad things will happen." He's like, "Nope, I'm gonna go in all the way to Troy." Gets killed. Achilles in his wee tent being emo, like, "Ah! He killed Patroclus. They must all die." He rushes in, kills one. I think gets an arrow in the
Is this not just a typical D&D campaign though? This just sounds
Pretty
a lot
much,
like
yeah.
There's usually less love. There's usually less players being in romantic leads with each other in D&D campaigns.
Either way, thanks again for staying on. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the subject, and honestly, we had nearly 2 hours worth of stuff from this. So,
still recording?
Man. Yeah, we're still recording. We're still streaming. So, hey, it would be great if we had a blooper reel. So again, thanks everyone for joining us, and I'm glad that you guys all enjoyed this. I hope to see you again next time for the next subject, whatever that will be. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a few comments, or maybe we'll get a few messages. I am on Goa Joe, aka I'm at Animite Tales on Twitter. The Betarians YouTube channel is where this will be posted on, and we stream these. At least we're going to try and stream these every single week on the good old Joey the Mystic, I think it is.
Joey the Mystic.
I can never remember my own Twitch account name. But if you guys enjoyed this, check out Joey the Mystic, the Betarians, or at Animite Tales on Twitter, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Thank you yet again. Ciao ciao for now.